How else are you going to convince? All right, Tom.
All right. All
Let's give
right.
let's give
Okay.
everyone a chance to understand what prayer and talking to God is all about.
Okay. This is just like this. This is what I do. So, Father, I just ask for your help today as Chris and I do this podcast, and I just ask that everything technically will go well, and I really need your help, and just that we'll be able to put information out there that can help a lot of people. So, ask for your help in this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, okay. And I just need to
You
say
know it's a
okay for
good
that. There we
podcast when
go.
you start off with a prayer. You got to know something good's coming out of that podcast. There'll be no
Well, Chris, it's
there will be no twerking on this podcast. I can promise you that.
you got that one right. Oh, hey, great to get to know you just a tiny bit yesterday, but now we'll have some fun together. How's that?
Yeah, I think chopping it up is always good. I tell people, we live in a society lately where there's all this social media, but people aren't
Hmm.
getting social with each other anymore. People aren't getting to know each
Yeah,
other anymore. People are
yeah,
taking these small little tidbits of information and moments in time, and they think that that's getting social. When I post something about me and my dogs or something, that's not me getting social with everyone. That's just me telling people, hey, here's my dog. But when you can
yeah,
chop it up with somebody and you get to know them and you get to get really down deep into their soul, that's getting
yeah.
social.
Yeah, I agree. I usually like that social bit by actually face to face, but hey, this is the closest we can get to face through video chat like this. So
Well,
great stuff.
I
Great.
think I think the whole like FaceTime Zoom thing is actually better than face to face because I can have really good face to face, look somebody in the eye conversations with people all over the world without actually having to
Yes.
fly
Yeah.
all over the world.
I agree that I agree with you there, but I do still like that person to person direct. Hey, you know.
I
So
like when
yeah.
you get a chance to meet somebody, but in this case, I think Zoom makes us all Superman.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So hey. So great being able to be on this podcast. Thank you.
Sounds good. Tom, tell everyone who you are and where you live, what you do, what you love to do, the whole nine yards. Give them a little bit of Tom Kerber. Give them a small dose.
Okay, all right. So I've been involved in electronic development for 44 years plus.
You're a
I
tinkerer.
started actually, yeah, actually, in public school. My parents bought me the first power supply in public school and started learning about electrical stuff at that time. And it was great. I grew up on a farm, and it was a 50-acre grape farm in Ontario, Canada, near Toronto. And the thing about doing that is that I had access to all my dad's tools. He
Oh,
was
that's cool.
not only a finished carpenter, but he was one that not only would cause grapes to grow or help grapes to grow and peaches and cherries and all that stuff, but if he wanted a piece of machinery,
Wait a second. Up in Canada, you
he
guys grew grapes?
yeah, oh yeah, this is in the Niagara Peninsula. This is a hotbed of it's like California in temperatures because it's right between the Great Lakes. So you get a lot of great production in that area, wine production.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
That's actually kind of
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So we had a mix of all different kinds of fruit and also some grapes, and eventually it all went to grapes. But growing up on a farm was the absolute best place for me to be because my dad was very, very much able to take an idea and build it. So it did. Now you think of carpentry. Well, he'd build whole houses. That was not a problem. You know, When it came to plumbing, he'd do plumbing. When it came to electrical, he'd do some electrical. Now, I wouldn't trust his electrical too much, but he did make it work, you know. And so usually he'd have the electricians do their thing, but he did do his fair share of electrical as well. But the thing was that I was able to grow up with his abilities and learning and all those tools. One of the things my dad wanted on the farm was a almost like a cherry picker, where it's a three-wheeled cart that has a long boom on it, and you'd have the place where you stand in, and you could go up and down. And he wanted to use that for doing the peaches and cherries pruning. And the thing was, all the units on the market, you would drive forward with this three-wheel cart, and then you'd go up in the air, and then you'd have to maneuver this thing around and then move into the next thing. What he wanted to do is have it swing side to side. Now, he didn't know anything about hydraulics, and he wasn't one to put all these drawings on paper as to how this thing would come together. He literally, I kid you not, he took a chalk line in the garage. We had a heated garage, the concrete floor, and he snapped it on the ground and started building it. Put an engine in it, two wheels with a gearbox and hydraulics. He got another friend to help him with the hydraulics, and he ended up making a three-wheeled cart that you could go up and down in the air and it'd keep the bucket straight up and down, with hydraulics, with electrical, with everything. So this wasn't your average farmer that didn't know anything about building things.
He was the
so
Elon
that's where
Musk
I
of
grew up.
farmers.
Yes. Yeah. What I mean, anything he wanted to build, he would build. Another time he built a for the truck, so you could dump 15 tons of grapes in a great big box. Everybody would use these small little boxes,
How much?
half-ton
15
boxes.
tons?
15 tons.
That's a
And
lot, isn't it?
yeah. So he'd lived, it was basically like a dump truck, but he converted a regular truck into this dump truck with a 15-ton bin on the back.
You say a regular truck, like a Ford F-150?
One of those, no, one of those big trucks, like, 12, whatever they do, like with the dual wheel in the back. And, I don't know, what is it, a 10 or 15-ton truck, but he made this box.
Okay, good.
And so,
Because I was
yeah,
thinking to
so
myself, I'm like, Ford F-150, that's not going to hold
no,
15 tons.
no. This was one of those great big, anyways,
truck.
commercial truck. And he put a boom, all the hydraulics on there to raise this bin so he could back up and shoot 15 tons of grapes into their hopper. And believe me, when he did that, they're used to half-ton bins coming in. It kept them hopping, because they did, all of a sudden this big chunk, a load of grapes came out in one shot. So that was my dad, So
That's
growing
awesome.
up in that environment, I ended up we had a water system, and where a piston pump and a jet pump, and we were able to pump the water for spraying the grapes and also feeding the houses. And so I eventually ended up being commissioned as a young guy to look after the water system for the two houses. So all of those plus I did all sorts of crazy projects of my own that I wanted to do. I made my first solar panel for heating a house, heating hot water for the house. And I figured out what it might look like. And so I made my own solar panel in high school to heat hot water in the backyard. So
Awesome.
I that's where I understood about thermodynamics, like how do you get heat to transfer through metal? How do you get it to flow into heat to flow into water? How do you do all those calculations and do all that kind of stuff in high school?
It's funny you mentioned that because I saw a video recently of a guy in California where they have, water issues, and he literally built, for lack of a better word, a massive
Water
water
tower?
tower that he could collect water in when it rained, and it would store the water. And then because it was a raised tower, it would store the water, but it would also feed. He grew like crops in his backyard. He had like cucumbers and other stuff. And then he ran the water into his house. He literally, I want to say he literally was able to feed his crops, like his backyard lawn and everything. He was able to feed it water all year round with the water that he was able to capture when it rained. He didn't have to rely on the water system that much.
Yeah, now around our area, that gets a little bit difficult because the water becomes very hard for part of the year.
When you
Frozen.
say what area, where are you at?
So Ontario's near Toronto, so we get freezing temperatures. So
Yeah, I was going to say that'd be a large water tower with
that
frozen water.
so the water gets very hard at that point. We can
Oh, you
skate
said
on
hard.
it.
I thought you were talking about calcium. I was
Oh, that too, that
yeah.
too, and all sorts of things. But
How do you guys
so
keep the
that's
water from freezing in your water towers? Don't you guys have water towers?
no. Oh yeah, well they pump enough through it, they insulate it, they do all sorts of things with to as long as you keep water flowing, yeah, you got to do all those kinds of things. But yeah, so that's the environment I grew up in. So that's why it's not hard for me to design things. And my father, I mean, like I said, my father could look at a concept and turn it around in his mind. And I've been given a gift that I can do the same thing. I can design a whole thing in my brain without putting anything to paper.
You know that
And
was his
then
gift to you as a son. He literally gave that to you.
yeah, it's in the genes somehow. I don't know how, but it's also the environment. It was a great environment, a learning environment to do that kind of stuff.
I think the
So,
greatest thing you can teach people on the show is that there's nothing you can't solve. There's nothing you can't create if you put your mind to it.
oh, yeah. When my dad or myself would come up to a roadblock, like how do you get around this thing? Like, what are you going to do now? And you have to think quickly on your feet to figure out, okay, how's the way around it? Or do you have to go through it, or what do you have to do to change the circumstance?
Sad to
Um,
say, we don't teach kids enough these days about creating things, being creative.
yeah,
And I think that
yeah.
that's something super important because when you learn how to solve a problem as a child like that, it allows you to solve all kinds of bigger problems when you get older.
Yeah, and hey, talking about kids, Lego was one of my favorites. I mean, I
Oh,
did a lot of Lego stuff and that. So
did you ever do
building all sorts.
the Star Wars Legos where like they had the major like trooper ships and stuff?
Yeah, no, I didn't go that far. That was too much money. Money was still scarce, even though we grew up on a farm and
I
that.
will say
But
one thing: you step on a Lego, that shit hurts. Oh, do not go barefoot around Legos.
yeah, you got that one right. You got that one right. So anyways, that's my background. And then I got married shortly after. Well,
So now you're tinkering with
actually.
the wife. You're like trying to, honey, I can move over.
So I got married in '82. I would have probably been delayed in getting married, but what happened was I went to university for the first year, and I was able in high school to understand calculus and physics and all those kinds of things without any issues whatsoever. Never had to study. I was second highest in physics and calculus in high school, those kinds of things. And then when I went to university, I was too involved in the party scene, and I wanted to go for engineering. And you can't mix not knowing how to study, dating my future wife, during that time, running a business, and trying to rip off some marks in university. So I was trying to understand new concepts in university, which just didn't have the gel time. And with not studying, ever being had to study before, yeah, I couldn't do it. I ended up with 59.5% at the end of the year, and you needed 60% to go on with engineering. They said to me, just take some arts courses and come back in a year And I says, no, that's not. I was running a business already at that time, so I just said, no, I'm going to do. I took some other electronic courses,
What
and
were you running? What
well,
business were you running at the time?
I made, yeah, I had made rowing amplifier systems for audio for rowing for the racing shells. So when they'd have like 8 people in the boat, I made these with little speakers in the boat so that the cocks would have, instead of having a megaphone in front of him yelling at the guys, he would be just telling the guys quietly, go, go, and doing these things. So they had this strategic advantage of nobody else knowing what was going on. And with the noise inside the boat of trying to go through the water fast, it's harder to hear. So everybody was able to hear. So I made an amplifier system. I was competing against another one that wasn't too hot. I made a very good quality one. And my demonstration to show how rugged what my unit was, I took the amplifier box, which had batteries in it, and threw it up in the air and let it land on the ground. And, and I was hoping and praying that it would still work after I did that. And then, usually that was the sales pitch of the unit. And so there was racing shells that were using it. I think one of mine got into one of the Olympics, but I never followed that through. But that was one of the things. And I also made other electronic devices. But I think really it started in high school. I got like a really good electrical teacher that I just sucked up everything I could suck up, as far as learning on electronic, machine shop, all those kinds of different abilities so that, anything I wanted to machine, I could machine anything I wanted to build, And I was working on repairing car and home stereo equipment and installing it as well. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth in
It's funny.
electronics.
Remember when Elon unveiled the Cybertruck and he took, I want to say, a gun and he shot it at the window to show that it was bulletproof?
Okay, no, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, if you go look it up on YouTube, you'll see it. And I think he threw a rock, maybe he threw a rock at the window. Maybe it
Okay.
wasn't done. But the long story short was, it's the stories you're telling me about throwing a amplifier in the air and having it hit the ground and still work. That's pretty impressive. When you've got something that you've built really well, you're confident to basically take a baseball bat to it and say, you know what? I know this is built well. I know it's gonna sustain this.
Yeah, yeah, and these guys were, they were kids. A lot of them were kids. They were rough on equipment, and so you had to make something that really did stand up. So that was my first product called the Robox, and
Oh, the Robots. That's actually a good name. It's important to have a good name.
So I had that, and I fine-tuned it a little bit in university while I was there, and built my own circuit boards and those kinds of things. Radio Shack was my go-to place to,
Is Radio Shack still around?
Yeah, actually, I think there's somebody just told me there's Radio RS Store, I think it is online. But I used to frequent the place and buy them out of every knob that they had for building my parts or capacitor, and then I'd have to go around to like 10 stores and buy all the stuff that I needed.
Oh God, I got to share a similar story with you. Remember back in the day, the first Atari video game?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to learn how they got this video game to work. I was so enamored with Pong. If you can imagine Pong back.
Oh yeah. Hey, I imagine it. I know it.
Yeah. So I literally took my Atari apart just to see the inside guts of it. And I unscrewed all the things and I pulled all the parts apart and then I put it back together and I had an extra part left. And I was like, I couldn't remember where it went, but it still worked. It was one of those parts I was like, I can't believe it's still working. And then it started getting me to ask about things. And I said to myself, wow, what if you could enhance things by taking things away? What if like things could work without having to have that extra part? And I started realizing that sometimes you don't need everything to make something work. Like I
Yeah.
took my mom's TV apart one time and I had an extra tube left, if you can remember back in the day when they had tubes
Yeah.
to actually give you
Yeah.
color. And I had an extra tube left that I forgot, but the TV still worked. It just had a lot of yellow in it. So I've had to put the tube back because the tube that I had added red. And it was
Okay.
crazy. If you think back to the back in the day how TVs were built then and now how LED displays are built now,
Oh,
the
it was, yeah,
night
and
and day.
it was all hand wired. Like everything was wired by hand.
Well, it was not only
My,
hand wired, but they actually had tubes to
oh
create
yeah,
color.
we didn't have the first transistors came out when I was in high school. So, we're talking the computers used tubes. The big computers used tubes to calculate things.
Yeah.
I mean, that shows that I've got a few years on me. But yeah, and
Well,
as a matter of
the
fact,
white hair does it too, you know.
yeah. So one thing that I used to really like is Heathkit. Did you ever hear of the company Heathkit? Heathkit.
I
They
know
were
the Heath
actually
bar, but I don't know the Heath kit.
now okay. Heathkit was you could buy as kits, and that kit would be everything you needed to build for an electronic meter, or if you wanted to build an oscilloscope, you wanted to build a TV, you wanted to build a little computer. You'd have all the parts, and you would put these parts together and wire them up on the board and solder them. And so I built a lot of these kits for my electronic devices that I had. I built a tube tester. Talk about tubes. You need to test the tubes to see if which one's defective. Rather than go down to the store, I built my own tube tester. I don't know how I managed to come up with the money, but I come up with the money from time to time and bought one of these kits, built my meter, built my oscilloscope, built my signal generator. I still have them to this day, and they still work. You know,
It's funny when you
but
look back on life and you go, wow, I wonder if this thing still works. And you turn a switch on and here and there and you give it some power and you're like, holy fuck, it still works.
yep, exactly. So that's where I kind of cut my teeth on electronics and electrical stuff as well. Like the neat part was in high school we had it was a very special high school in that they just added a whole tech wing. So there was actually they would teach the kids how to work on cars. There was grade 9 drafting, so you'd know how to do drawings. They had a machine shop that had every type of machine, vertical mill, lathes, saws, everything you need to make gears, you name it. And so I was able to be in that place. And one thing is, I got to attest to is my English did not very well develop in the younger days and even in high school, because I would always skip out on the English classes and some of the other classes to go down to the tech wing and do something there, build something. So remember my electronics teacher, he says, okay, so what class are you skipping right now? He knew, but hey, that was a way that I could spend extra time in the machine shop or in the electronics lab or in the big motor generator stuff that we're doing.
That's awesome, man. So talk a little bit about where this journey is taking you today. You're involved in red light therapy. I don't know much about red light therapy. All I know is it's like one of the more popular ways for people to get healthier. Talk a little bit about how red light therapy has played a role in your life currently.
Okay, so paths in life, you never know what the path that you end up on, to get to where you are today. But in my case, when I was earlier married, in the early years of my marriage, we had an older home, very old home, and they had what's called storm windows, which means a second layer of window on the outside of the house. And you'd have to put them on and off every winter. And so I went up the ladder, and I was at the second floor height, and I pushed the window in and didn't have the ladder quite positioned right, and I fell from the second floor height onto concrete. Not a good thing to do. Bad flying lessons, and I really hurt my back. And but I didn't break anything. So hey, you're young, you heal, everything goes well. But then every year, 2 years, I'd have severe back pain from muscle spasms. Like I'd pick up a paper clip wrong, and on the floor, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, and the pain would go on for 3, 4, 5 months before I was back back normal again, kind of thing. But so I had that going on. And at the same time, my wife had an illness through all the pressures of being self-employed. We had just, I ended up with a partnership that went sour. The guy was very deceptive. He was moving money to the Cayman Islands from my company, and I wasn't paying any attention. I was just involved in the electronic side of things. So when I eventually tried to get separate from that kind of thing, I wanted to buy him out of my own company, and he wouldn't have it. He was basically using the company to launder money and avoid taxes. I didn't know all that stuff. I was pretty naive. But anyways, eventually I was able to get some checking with the lawyers, checking things out. It was my company, and he changed the locks on the door, so I went back in. Well, that started a thing where for 4.5 years, I ended up in and out of court because I was charged with criminal charges for breaking into my own business.
That's hilarious.
And I finally had a judge and jury trial that came down with a verdict. I mean, there was every screw up that you can imagine along in this legal system. There's no justice. It's just a legal system that, self-supports itself. And that went on for 4.5 years, and I finally cleared my name. But the stress that we went through was over the top. And after the third child my wife had, our third child, she crashed, and her thyroid went nuts, and just a host of other problems. So she was even bedridden for over a year, and I was looking after her and trying to look after the business and the kids and playing Mr. Mom, and that was a difficult period. But because of that, being there and trying to get her better, over the years, I didn't get rid of stress. I just made more of it, as far as trying to run a business, trying to make ends meet, trying to do all those things, and my wife thankfully made it through all that. We're still married now. We're coming up now to, we just passed through 42 years, and we'll be up to 43 this spring. So summer, sorry.
43 years. That's impressive. How old are you?
I'm 60. Well, in 2 weeks I'm 65. So
well, happy birthday, buddy.
yeah. So, but I say that because the stress will really mess with your health.
Oh yeah,
and
totally.
it really messed with my wife's health. And so over the years, I built a lot of different electronic devices for different companies, including a couple of my own that I was trying to make something happen. I made one time I made a power converter. This is way before what you're talking about now. If you're talking 30 years ago, a power converter that take a whole bank of batteries and could run one of those ice cream trucks. All the refrigeration equipment I designed that and built that, and didn't go anywhere. I built things that went on power lines to measure how much power is going through the distribution lines up to 45,000 volts. We had that going, and that's kind of when I had that device on the market, and we were starting to get some good money starting to come in, and then the money started disappearing out of the company. And so, and eventually, I had to give up on that. device, but electrical utilities use something similar these days now. But I had it that it was remotely, you could remotely monitor the power lines and how much is going through. And you could
Interesting.
tell whether the fault went through there. And then when I got on more on my own, I like once I had started a new company in 1990 called Kerber Applied Research. I developed a lot of different products, and especially one of them was for oil wells. To go into oil wells 5 kilometers or 3 miles into the earth and take movies and pictures down there. And because of my experience with hydraulics and water systems and all that kind of stuff, this thing had to be designed to withstand 5,000 pounds per square inch.
That's impressive.
Imagine that.
That's impressive.
And we had to have a 3/8 of an inch thick sapphire lens on the front of it. Like it was like about 2 inches in diameter, but 3/8 of an inch thick. We tried the quarter inch, and it blasted that quarter inch in pieces. And we went up to 3/8 of an inch, and we were able to finally be able to look through that lens and put a camera system on the other side that could look inside the oil well, and they could see faults that they charge it with gas and that air pressure, or and then they could see different problems in the well. And I built a number of other things for the oil well device to create high pressure in a container. Or in a cylinder more. They were using explosive materials, mixing 2 very explosive materials on surface, and then they would try and ignite it inside the closed cavity, and that would create very, very high pressures to drive a hydraulic cylinder, which would lock a cork in the well. So but you have to have that kind of pressure to lock that cork in. Remember, I said there's 5,000 pounds per square inch below that cork.
That's insane.
So that thing, if that cork loosened up, it could go to the moon. If a dramatic 3-mile long pea shooter, with that cork in it. So it had to lock in, and we developed a high pressure hydraulic little motor assembly that would generate 15,000 pounds per square inch and be able to drive that cylinder and lock that plug in place. And it ran off of 57 AA batteries. You know those AA batteries that everybody...
57?
Yeah. We needed 90 volts and rechargeable, and so they were all in series inside of a vacuum flask. And that was the other crazy part, was it all had to be inside of a vacuum flask, all the electronics, because the temperature down there would get to 200 degrees C. So no electronics would survive in those temperatures. So we had these batteries inside a vacuum flask that was like 8 feet long. So not a very portable for your coffee, an 8 foot long tube. But
I was going to say, well, the 55 batteries is impressive. To put that many batteries in something, you clearly had to go get the bulk service of batteries.
Yeah, so we had to develop all the software algorithms to try and run this special DC motor, permanent magnet motor, and we got through all that, and it did its work, and I thought that was going to really take off and make my millions. There was other things that happened outside of my control and didn't go anywhere. Developed operating room lights for, go into a normal medical hospital through another company. And they were supposed to, because I did 3 years of research and design before that, coming up with this special high temperature or way of moving heat away from LEDs very effectively. Anyways, I developed this, and it would work well for these operating room lights. And I got an agreement with them where they were supposed to pay me like $50 one of these operating room lights a piece for my royalty, and $50. Okay, this operating room light was like 10 grand. So $50 is not a whole lot of money. I spent 3 years in before I got to know them in perfecting this process. And wouldn't you know, they found another way to go around it, so they didn't have to pay me the $50 an operating room light. Like it would made me, like, the number of lights that went out there in the thousands all around the world would have made me quite a bit of money. And they found a way to get around that. So that's been kind of my life, trying to get to where I'm at now. But I'll just share one other thing that was kind of cool. Is not only did I grow up on a farm, and that was very helpful to my to developing things in my area, in the Toronto area, there was all sorts of telecom electronics that was developed, and also RIM, research in motion, with the Blackberries, was just in Waterloo, about an hour from me. So and you've got some of the landing gear and other electronic assemblies that was developed for the de Havilland for different jets and that. So in our area, we basically have Silicon Valley North. Okay, what you have in Silicon Valley, it's a very, very high concentrated electronic area. So I had access to all the major companies within 1 hour of where I lived. So we're talking Motorola, we're talking Zilog, we're talking Digit, just any company you can think of electronically was in Toronto, feeding us. So I always had people coming to my electronic facility and saying, "Hey, what can you do with this thing? Can you use it for anything? It's a brand new part of some kind." And then there was one case, this guy came down to me, one salesman that was regularly seeing me, and this was by Future Electronics. Now, Future Electronics is the one that made the huge LED ball. This goes way back. That's from New York City when they lowered that thing. That was Future Electronics. Anyways, I had the best area to grow up in because all these companies were that close to me. And so I was able to visit them, get all the technical manuals, all that kind of stuff. And the salesman came to me one day and he says, "Hey, Tom, what can you figure out a use for this high power LED?" And it was a little box that, like running off a 9-volt battery, and it had these super bright LEDs on it. And he says, "Yeah, can you use it for something?" And, my mind is spinning. What can I use it for? This is brand new. Nobody's got it in their hands yet. The problem was the LEDs cost $70 at that time, $70 a piece. Now, 3 of these LEDs would make enough light for a 100-watt light bulb. Now, who in their right mind would pay $70, like $200 for parts for a $100 light bulb, and you haven't even made a profit margin yet? So there's no way that this device, they were showing me how you could put it on the back of trailers, 18-wheelers for lights for the back of the stoplights, tail lights. Well, nobody's going to buy an LED for that, like not at those prices. And
how much was it?
As I'm going,
how much was
what's that?
How much was it?
$70 a piece at the raw cost.
Okay.
That was the best pricing that I could get. And, if you went into the thousands, you might get it for $50 a piece. So I'm like, what are you going to use that for? And I love chocolate. I don't know about you, but I grew up on chocolate, okay? And treats and all that kind of stuff.
What's your favorite chocolate treat? Favorite chocolate candy bar of all time?
Oh, I'd have to say it's Kit Kat or, the chunky Kit Kat.
Kit Kat crushes.
Okay.
Kit Kat is the king.
Yeah. And so anyways, I love, so I, as a kid, didn't know better, and I ended up with a lot of cavities and all that kind of stuff and kept going to the dentist. Well, eventually, as you get older, those cavities start falling out and you got to start, replacing them and whatever. And so I was in the dental chair a lot. And guess what they started using in the dental chair, the white composite material that required a blue light to cure the filling. And
Oh,
they used a
interesting.
halogen bulb. They used, at that time, they used a halogen bulb, one of those 50-watt GU10s that screw in the, you used to use them in the ceilings, those little
Uh-huh.
guys. And you know how hot those were.
Yeah.
And they'd have to put a filter in front of it, and then they had the fiber optic probe that go in your mouth and harden the filling material. And I was looking at that and thinking, hey, if I used the LED, I could harden that filling. And so I designed a LED device that could harden the filling, got my dentist to try it on me, my own unit. She says, it works beautiful. And I proceeded to make a handheld battery operated, their unit was cord to a big transformer in a box, and I had this portable unit that would recharge in a little holder with rechargeable batteries, electronic controlled everything, and you'd harden the filling with that. And so I was one of the first ones out with this blue LED for hardening the white fillings for dentists. And I was competing against 3M. 3M were a step ahead of me, so it was just 3M and myself. Well, 3M doesn't play fair.
Nobody.
I'm just a little guy, and so I did sell my product to various dentists. I went to see them on, directly. I had got FDA approval. I was selling some units in the States. Knew nothing about marketing. Worked with some others, but I made mine in North America. They made theirs in China, and there was no. It's pretty tough to compete against that. We were selling our device at around $2,000 a piece, and dentists were buying them. And so you can imagine it's $2,000, a $70 LED. I can make some money on that, some profit margin. And so that's what I did for a little while. But that was the preparation ground for red light therapy. That's how I got. Now, how did I end up using a blue light and jumping over to red light? What do you think? How did that happen?
You tell me.
Okay, so what happened was, remember I told you my wife's illness, right? I'm trying to improve her situation.
Well, what was
So
your
I'm
illness,
going.
by the way?
It was first hyperthyroidism,
Okay.
but they removed the thyroid, and then she still had a whole host of problems, including new problems. Okay, so and all the stress that we were under caused all sorts of issues. So I was trying. She kept improving. Okay, that was a great thing, but it wasn't under normal medical. I started, trying to do as much homework as I could to try and help her. So now roll that ahead to about 17 years ago. 18 years ago, I guess now, time keeps ticking, I had the product for the dentists on the market, and then I guess it's 17 years, I'm just thinking things through. So I met I went to hear about this doctor, and two different people that were using my services as electronic developer came to me on the same day, okay? They didn't know each other, and both of them said, hey, for your wife, have you considered this one doctor we heard of over here and half an hour away from me? And both of them said the same thing on the same day. They didn't know each other. They didn't coordinate that. I mean, that was when I heard that, I just thought, okay, something's up here. Hey, I got to check this doctor out. So I went to see him, and he ended up helping my wife, and she didn't have cancer, but I'll tell you, this is cool. He's asking her all the questions, and he says, so is there any stress can cause all sorts of problems in your health? Is there any stress you can get rid of? What'd she do? She starts pointing at me. She says, I'm the stress maker. Well, all these years of self-employment, all these years of getting, thrown in the garbage, with different companies, and you try your best. You go, to the nth degree to help them, and then they toss you in the garbage, and it's a rough go when you're self-employed,
Well, listen, let me tell you something. Being an entrepreneur, it is not for everybody. And the fact that you've gone through so many challenges in life only makes you stronger today than you've ever been.
And it's prep work for what I'm dealing with now when we're talking of a medical device that can help get people better. So well, anyways, I go to this meeting and she starts pointing at me. So he turns his focus over to me and he says, "So what do you do?" And I says, "Well, I make this very powerful light for curing the white fillings. And I got that on the market." And his eyes just literally at that moment bugged out. I mean, he's just like, "You can make powerful blue light? Can you make powerful red light?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, I can put a red LED as opposed to a blue LED. Why?" He says, "Well, red light of 635 nanometer, which is a certain color red. It's more of the orangey red that you see on taillights. Sometimes you see an orangey red, that's 635. And if you look at 660 nanometer, it's more of a deeper red color. So if you look at newer cars and you see them driving down the highway, now you know which it's 635 or 660. That's the two wavelengths of red LEDs, okay? So 635, he says, it's got to be 635 nanometer. And I said, "Sure, I can do that. Why?" And he says, "Well, it activates a compound, a drug that was already approved about 10 years earlier to kill cancer cells."
Really?
If he would have come to me at that point, okay, and said, "Hey, I want you to make red light to help heal, to get rid of pain in your shoulder," I would have told him, "You're nuts." Like, I could not believe that light could do anything on the body. Okay, that's where I was. But think of where I was. I was with dentistry. Blue light was the right wavelength to harden the filling material, cause the catalytic reaction, right? Yep. How hard is it for me to believe at that point that right wavelength of red can photoactivate a drug that kills cancer? I didn't have any trouble believing that because to me, it made sense. And sure enough, it did make sense. So I said, "Sure, I can do that." And his brother was very wealthy. And so he had bought the drug. Imagine the timing of this. Okay, this is where I think God tunes all the dots to line up, and everything lines up perfectly for this to happen.
He does have a plan. He sometimes doesn't tell us what the plan is, but he has a plan.
Yeah. So here I am. He was, as I said, his brother was very wealthy, owned a worldwide engineering firm, and he had bought the drug for two of his patients. One patient had cancer on the throat. The other patient had breast cancer. The woman had breast cancer, and both of them weren't doing well. And he had bought $5,000 worth of this drug for each patient. And what doctor would do that, right? Out of his own pocket, right? And he bought the drug, and that day he was going to go buy, imagine this, 10 red laser pointers, okay? And there you go, if you can see it, red laser pointers. He's going to buy 10 red laser pointers and strap them together with elastic bands. And I says, no. Can you hold up for 3 weeks? Can you just delay this whole thing for 3 weeks? And he said, yes, he would. And I built him. I had a number of employees. I had half a dozen employees at the time. And I said, all hands on deck, guys. We're changing direction today. We're going to build the first water-cooled, high-power LED system for treating cancer, and we're going to get it done in 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, we delivered the light to the doctor, and he treated both patients with the drug and with the light, and he shrunk the tumors on both patients, and in 1 month's time. And I was just blown away. I was like, I'm in. Now, I was so naive at that point in time because I had not been in the medical per se, other than the dentistry, but I did not know how difficult the regulatory system has been set up to try
Oh,
and,
yeah. Yeah, welcome.
okay.
Surprise, surprise, huh?
Oh no, I didn't know. I didn't know. Okay, I had no clue. I just believed in the commercial side of electronics. Is you make something today, you start testing it tomorrow, and you sell it, next week. There's nothing like 10 years from now you might see it advance a little. That's not what I believed in. So I had no clue. I knew that the doctor said to me, he says, this drug is already approved in cancer, for bladder cancer. And he said, and here I see it working for these other cancers. In the next 3.5 years, we worked together very, very closely. I kept improving on my light, to keep making it more and more powerful so it could go deeper, because this was non-invasively activating the drug to go through externally, to go through the skin tissue into the tumor, activate the drug, and kill the cancer. So that was where I was at. Now, how did I get to light on, light going to help heal anybody or reduce their pain or save a foot from amputation? Or how was I ever going to get there? So I wouldn't have believed it. Okay, how's that supposed to work, right? Light. Well, as it turned out, about a couple weeks after I built him the first light, remember I told you I had those muscle spasms every year, 2 years, I picked up a paper clip or something small, and all of a sudden I wrenched my back, and I was in that severe pain state. Just screaming pain. And I had this light that I got back from the doctor because I needed to tweak it a little bit, improve some things, and do whatever I can't remember. But it was already a pretty powerful light. We've got patents on that light, both Canada and US, on using
When did you get the
very
patent?
powerful light with, as a matter of fact, a few years ago. It took 12 years to get the patent, going back and forth with patent
but once
office.
you got it, you've got a good 7 years to sit on it.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, I passed all those years already, and we got probably about another 7 years left, to get this out there. But so I had this. I was working on my computer with extreme pain, back pain, and I couldn't stop. That's one thing with self-employment, that you can't stop. You can't say, "Hey, I'm going to come in 2 weeks from now and collect unemployment,
Well,
whatever
it's actually
unemployment
funny.
in the meantime."
You mentioned that, but Elon Musk recently said something interesting about that same thought process. Is, as an entrepreneur, you don't have any days off. Every day is an opportunity. And when you
Yeah,
look,
and nothing's changed. Nothing's
you look at
changed.
you look at Elon, he literally works 7 days a week. And it's funny, I think
Yeah.
back to myself, and I'm like, yeah, I pretty much work 7 days a week too. Like, I enjoy what I do.
Yes, and I do too. I'm not complaining to that point, but unfortunately, I love to have a 6-day work week, and many times there's this extra call or something else, or I got to get something through, and it requires another day on top of that. I'm in extreme pain, working on my computer, thinking, what can I, and all of a sudden, hey, I heard about light working on helping to reduce pain, but would that do anything? How is that possible? It's just pretty foreign to me. But I thought, what the heck? I got this light in my office here that I was working on. Why don't I put it on my back and a little bit away from my back, because it was pretty powerful light. It was about that diameter now, with some very powerful LEDs in there. Probably the equivalent to what the light you'd get from a 200-watt light bulb at that point in red. it was already, my lights now are the last light, just to give you an idea, that I developed probably about 7 years ago for this field. I got multiple companies. I got a company in Buffalo, multiple companies for what we're doing. But the one light in two of your hands, okay, the area of two of your hands, I am putting into those LEDs. There's 2,000 high power LEDs in that thing in two modules. And we're putting out the light equivalent of 500 100-watt light bulbs. That's 500 100-watt light bulbs in brightness. And it's pulsing, so it's going 20,000 times a second for only 5 microseconds, 5 millionths of a second. But that's able to go deep into the body, activating this drug and killing cancer. And I thought everything would just take off once I knew, we got that stuff out there and we're starting to do things. But come back to my back pain. I put this powerful light in the back of my chair, and the pain level was probably like 8 out of 10. It's screaming at you. You can hardly concentrate.
Yeah, back pain's one of those things. There's no medication alive that'll get you over it. It's a tough one, especially if it's in the lower back.
I have L4, L5 I damaged, had bulging disc and all sorts of things over the years. So I had that pain, and I thought I'll just try it. I put it behind my back, and about 20 minutes later, I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And I stand up, and I'm like, I really slowly, I carefully descend myself into the chair, and here I am, I'm standing up, and I can even bend over. And I'm like, the pain is like down to like a 3 in 20 minutes, from 8 to a 3.
Wow.
And that was my aha moment. Yeah. That light could make that kind of difference with, in the human body. And that's how we developed all the devices that I've made. I've got this palm light, this one here, which is very powerful, as you can see, and people use it for TMJ. So it has very, very powerful LEDs inside here, and of the red wavelength, that's the one you see there, and you can see it going right through my hand. I'll turn off this upper light because I've got a pretty bright light here, but you can see the light going right through my hand. I don't know, can you see that?
Yeah, that's impressive.
So that's the red wavelength. As it turns out, the near infrared wavelength, that's this one here, 810 nanometer, you can barely see, okay? You can just see some dots there, okay? But that's actually coming through my hand. Much more power, much more energy is coming through my hand than what you just saw. Because our eyes can't see that wavelength. It's almost invisible. And so you can treat much deeper with that wavelength of light. And we've also developed a helmet that you can put on. That's this crazy beast here. We have 10 of those palm lights in there. And the big difference is that we have enough optical power to, there we go. And we have the optical power in this thing. So, you just imagine my head inside there. And, like this. Somebody goes like this. And you can see the energy going in. And that's the red, and then there's the near infrared. There's the red 660. This is the near infrared 810. And, it's crazy that light, I would have never imagined that, but light like this can help with strokes, concussions, all that kind of stuff.
And what does that sell for? What does it cost people?
That's like $6,500, that one there. And there's some competition on the market for like 40,000, and they still don't have the power that I have. So some people would say, hey, how is light ever supposed to penetrate the skull? Come on, give me a break. That's not going to work. I got my friend here, Alfred. Alfred has a splitting headache. Okay, this is a real human skull. Okay. I'm very thankful that somebody
That's not the guy that
donated
locked you.
his
That's not the guy that
his.
locked you out of the business, is it?
No, no. I guess at one time I wish that that could have happened, but no, I'm not that. No, I didn't have a vendetta. I forgave him a long time ago. He had all his own problems. I wouldn't want his problems. But here's my light. Okay, the 660 nanometer light. Now watch this. I'm just going to put this into the skull here, and I'm going to once again I'm going to turn off my light here just to make it a little more. So here's the light coming right through the skull, and I can move it around, and you can see it moving different places. And there's no science fiction here. There's my light unit, okay? And if I turn the skull the other way, here's the skull, the top of the skull, and I put the light on the outside. If I turn it around, you can see the light coming right through the skull. Like it's almost, so it does, there is reduction of light through the skull, but there's still plenty getting through. About 10% gets through and causes huge blood flow to, work its way through the brain. And also the other wavelengths, 810, can actually go much further than that. And I've got all sorts of fancy equipment that, very expensive equipment, not like some of the demonstrations like this guy here. This is one of my cheaper units. This is the cheaper units that I use. This is like $2,000, this guy here. Very special light measurement device. And what's cool is if you wanted to see, I'd show you a really cool demonstration, a real quick and cool demo. You want to see it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so here's
you're like the Bill Nye science guy of red light therapy.
Yeah, only thing with Bill Nye is I disagree with him big time.
Well, listen, Bill Nye made science an interesting thing to watch on video. You're making red light therapy an interesting thing to see on a podcast.
Yeah. The thing, when you look at all the different devices that I've made here, like these the helmet, the helmet is just 10 of these guys, okay, just placed in 10 strategic locations around the brain. So when you're talking all that takes years of design to think that all through. Yeah. Everything has to intricately be.
Where are you producing that? In Canada?
Yeah, mostly in Canada, but also in the U.S. as well. So.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. So the tariff thing is not going to bother me too much because I've got the company in Buffalo and I'm working with different ones. So if I move this guy, I better move my microphone down here. There we go. Okay. Now I hope you can see that. There up, let's see, there we go. Okay, so I've just got to double check here. So what I did is this is the sensor here, okay, that right there. It's just a little tiny round thing. And it only sees the light that's coming through that little window. So if I cover up the window, the numbers go way, way down. Like right now it's 22 microwatts. And there is 490 microwatts. So, obviously,
just for my edification, what is a microwatt?
A millionth of a watt of power.
Got it.
Okay, so I've got some pretty sensitive equipment here. So if here's a really cool demonstration. So right now, as I bring it closer and closer to my light that's illuminating my face here, I just like to look kind of nice on these broadcasts. So I have this big light panel.
I don't want to burst your bubble, but it's going to take a lot for you to look very nice or sexy.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this light sensor and I'm going to, magic here. I'm going to put it inside the palm of my hand with the light sensor looking through my palm. Okay. So there it is. There it is there, okay? And it's right now looking through my palm. and you can see that I've got, let's see, I just want to verify that so I'm not telling anybody a lie here. 0.07, okay, at 0.07 millionths of a watt of power coming, optical power coming through the thing. So now if I take my red light here, okay, and I bring it over top, see it's going up and up and up, the numbers. Okay, right now you're seeing I've got 7.5 microwatts of power coming through my hand, okay? When I switch it to, that's at 660 nanometer, and people that are really into the light stuff know that the longer the wavelength, the more energy will get through. So shorter the wavelength, like blue won't go through at all, okay? Won't go through a millimeter of tissue, like an eighth of an inch. Whereas red can go right through my hand, as I showed that, right? So we got 6.4 microwatts of power coming through, and now I switch it. So if I take the light away, see it drops right down. That's the ambient light in my room getting through my hand, the red from the light up there. But here is around 7. If I switch it to the, this is the 810 nanometer, it just jumped up to 330. So from 6.8 to 330, you do the math, how much more is getting through because of the 810 nanometer than the bright light. So there's the 7 and 330. So, you know, you're talking 40, 50 times more light is coming through with this wavelength that I can't even see. It's invisible.
That's impressive.
And that's the same thing when I do the skull. I put the skull, like, so people are like, well, come on, like, can light actually go through? So I'm going to put this skull, this guy's Alfred skull, okay, and I'm going to put the sensor. It's hard to do this when you got the everything inverts on you. But you see the sensor inside the top side of the skull, inside where the brain would be. And right now you're seeing, let's say, I got to look at it so I can tell it's hard to read in small numbers. Yeah, you got, okay. So I've got like 5 microwatts of power, almost like what was going through my hand there, right? Okay, if I put, that was, so if I go now and put the red light on there, look at that. I've gone up to 2.4 milliwatts. Okay, milliwatt is 1,000 times more than the microwatt. So I went from, in this case, if I did my math, it's off right now. Okay, hang on. There we go. 0.7 microwatts. 2.4 milliwatts of power. Okay, with the red.
So what is this light physically doing for people? What are some of the benefits by increasing this light to people?
Okay, Chris, I'll just show this and then I'll put it down. So there's the red, okay, and I'll explain that. There's 2.3 milliwatts of power. Now I'm going to switch it up to the 810 nanometer, that invisible, and you just saw it go up to 40. So from the bright red 3, let's say, almost 3 to 40. So that's how much more light gets through, light energy gets through using the longer wavelengths on a real human skull. Now, obviously, there's flesh on your head, no hair. I got some hair, okay? So the flesh is going to reduce it a little bit. The hair is going to reduce it a little bit, but you do have energy going through.
In my case, the hair is not going to reduce it at all.
No, you're one of the best candidates. Now, if you had really thick hair, you reduce a bit of that light coming through. But the key here, you said, what does it do? Well, the red light can actually go, a red or near infrared light can go into the cells, whether it's the brain or anywhere else in the body, and it's like supercharging the cells. Your body, when you eat something, breaks it down into sugars and other things. That sugar, the energy in the sugar goes into, through your bloodstream and gets to ultimate destination, your cell. And in your cell is what's called the mitochondria.
Yep.
It's the power, the mitochondria is the power plant of the cell. So normally when you eat and your body is working properly, every cell in your body gets nourished properly all the time. Problem comes is when you have disease or you have some kind of problem. As a matter of fact, diseases now, they're saying, they figure most of the diseases, if not all of them, are because of mitochondrial dysfunction. It's a new term that they're using out there, mitochondrial dysfunction, meaning that the mitochondria is not operating correctly. And when it isn't, it's not, doesn't have
I can believe that, because basically disease is cells that have transformed into something that's not good.
Right. And if you starve them, it's just imagine this. If you try to send the army out to get some bad group and you got them all starved, how well are they going to perform on the field? Not very well, right? They're going to be lacking. They're going to not have the energy they need. And that's the same with the human body. The cell needs to be fully charged up. It's kind of another way, like a battery on a car. If it's super discharged, try and start the car. You don't get the energy. And in this case, what we're doing is normally the nutrients in your body is getting there, but it's not happening because of the disease or because you've had an injury and now the blood is not flowing very well there. So you're barely getting enough blood flow through.
Yeah, blood flow is mission critical to having a healthy body.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So blood transfers oxygen and brings oxygen and nutrition to the parts of the body that it needs it. So if you don't have good blood flow to your feet or to your brain or to your fingers, all of that causes decay. It causes rot. It causes pain.
Oh, right on. And the flip side of it is your lymphatic system to drain the area is not working properly either. Yep. And so you now have two problems going on. You got a starved cell, well, three problems. You got a starved cell. You got blood flow not coming there to provide any nutrients or a very little lacking, and you don't have the lymphatic system going. So what happens with the red light is the red light of the wavelengths of 660, 810, or 1050.
How much is that device, by the way? The handheld.
This one, I have, these range between $975 and $1,900.
Turn it on. Let me see that again. Turn that on again.
Okay. So, yeah. So there's lots of toys on the internet, okay? Like little tiny light devices. They're not going to do anything for your shoulder. Forget it. Like maybe if you want to get your some collagen growth, a collagen buildup in your skin, share some of those lights. But as far as to penetrate really deep, not happening. So you need to have enough energy that can go right through the hand and, get there to the area, especially when you're talking a shoulder or a hip. I just had a guy on the other night on my webinar. I do webinars every Tuesday night, and he's a runner, and just not your average runner. He runs 100 miles. I mean, this guy.
Dude, I've seen those races by my house during the summertime. They do I'm not kidding you, they run 24 hours straight, and they run in this track area by my house. It blows my mind that somebody can run 24 hours straight. It's just so impressive.
Crazy. So he 2 years ago, he told me that he started having pain, 2.5 years ago, he started having pain in his hip, and he was having a hard time running. And then he finally, after 3 months, decided that's enough. I got to get some help with this. So he went to physiotherapists. He did chiropractic. He did ARP.
What's
I think
ARP?
The ARP. Sorry, I think I got the acronym wrong. It's when you start tapping the air, like you're trying to cause the nerve to work differently by some special tapping that they do, and it resets things. Not ARP. That's not ARP. Something else. Anyways, I can't remember. PRP. No, that's something else too. Anyways, I can't remember all the acronyms.
I'm just throwing out letters. HRP.
Yeah.
TRP.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, he tried that for a whole year. He said, I went to one chiropractor for 7 sessions, another one for 10 sessions, and another one for, and physio, and tried everything. Could not get anywhere. Nothing would get rid of his pain. His friend said, hey, you should get a hold of Tom Kerber and try out his light therapy. And so he came over, tried it, and he ended up buying a light, one of these palm lights. And we call it the palm light because it's kind of the size of your palm kind of thing. And he, when the pain comes on, he says he uses it, pain goes away. He says, if I was religious about treating myself just, constantly, no pain shows up. If I let it go for a while, then the pain starts showing up again. So there's some kind of structural issue that he's just pushing too hard. But he's able to get total pain relief. And he says, I can run like I'm back to full out running. So, amazing. So that's with, let's say, a foot. We've had diabetic foot ulcers. You mentioned about blood flow. That's the big problem with diabetics. They don't have any blood flow through their feet. Guess what happens after a while? Goes gangrenous. They get an injury of some kind. The injury doesn't heal. It keeps getting bigger, And so I've got a number of people that have been ones that were going to lose their foot because, to amputation. And that's what happens to diabetic. They end up losing one part of their foot, and next part of the foot. Next thing it's up to the knee. Next thing it's up to the crotch, because blood's not flowing right. Well, one of the women, like I know several cases, but one of them, she was in the hospital, and her son knew about this, and bought one of the lights, got her into the hospital. They did it undercover.
What do you mean?
Undercover. They weren't telling anybody about it. They kept the covers over the area, and they treated it like so they didn't get the doctors involved. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't have happened. Anyways, in 1 week, eventually the doctors found out and they let it go. But in 1 week, this woman, she was going to have her foot amputated, and I've got the pictures to show all this. But in 1 week, the color returned to the area, and they canceled the surgery. And then in 2 months' time, it was this. It looked like the whole entire heel and ankle was all one, absolutely the worst possible ugliness you can imagine.
Yeah.
And now it was down to a hole in her foot the size of a quarter. And another 2 months, it was totally healed.
Oh my God.
So,
godsend.
Yeah, 4 months healed. But whether it's a diabetic foot ulcer or a guy gets a concussion, I've got kids that have gotten concussions, and they're squirrely, like they have to go in a dark room. They can't see. They got double vision, or they can see, but they got double vision. The one kid I got on my webinar or on my videos on YouTube, I got sunpowerled.com. Or sorry, Sunpower LED. Just search for that. I got the website, sunpowerled.com. But anyways, this kid was at a church function, they were playing games in the basement on the concrete floor, and the kid wiped out. And when he wiped out, he had another kid fall on his head at the exact same time when he hit the concrete. So really nailed his head. And he came up from that after, being, I think he probably blacked out for a moment. But anyways, he said, why does my head hurt? And his mother said, because you just fell and hit your head really hard on the concrete. 2 minutes later, why does my head hurt? He had no short-term memory at all, nothing.
Oh, really?
And he was an avid homeschooler, and he was an avid reader. Couldn't read a book. They had to keep him in dark, no stimulation whatsoever. Soon as he try and come out and walk in the light, he's nauseous, all that kind of stuff. So he came down. This was about a week after the incident. Came down, went under the light, and so the day before, there's no way he could read that day. Like no way he could read anything. He tried reading because that's kind of love of his life, and he couldn't get a sentence in before he just couldn't take it. And the next day, he was able to read a book. One treatment. That's with our helmet.
That's
so
impressive.
We've had stroke. And the reason why I think we're getting there is because we have the power to do it. Where is it that you live?
I live in Vegas, and then I just bought a property in Utah.
All right. Well, you got some pretty impressive hills behind you.
Yeah, I do.
I was in Vegas.
Well, both
not
places I got hills.
Okay, so see what happens if you take a 4-cylinder pickup truck that maybe isn't even running perfectly, and you load up the back bed full of whatever heavy stuff. See how it works going up that hill. What do you think? You're going to make it up to the top?
No, it's
probably not.
Struggle. Yeah, it's going to struggle.
It's struggle. It may even die. The motor may die, whatever. And then you add to that, maybe it's only maybe 3 cylinders are only working. Try that with an 8-cylinder or a 12-cylinder. And what happens? You make it up the hill, no problem, right?
Yeah.
And you make it
more
up.
Power.
And that's what we are. We're really the 12-cylinder, 8 and 12-cylinder, motors, not the 1 and 2-cylinder motors that you can buy on Amazon. So we have the horsepower, kind of speaking, to get through the skull, into the brain, and cause things there. So we've had people with strokes that have had difficulty speaking. And really, one guy is a friend of mine, and you couldn't understand him. Like there was no way. It was 2 months after the stroke.
I just spent last week with a friend of mine, Lee Steinberg, who had a stroke. And yeah, it's affected his speech also. I think Lee would benefit greatly from some of your stuff. He's literally the greatest sports agent of all time.
Okay, so we had this guy. He's 80. He was 81 years old at the time. 2 months after the stroke, he could not speak. I mean, you couldn't understand him if you tried.
Yeah.
And
I've had a stroke
and
before too, and I go to my doctor's office and I see people with all kinds of speech impediments.
So this guy, he did one treatment under the helmet. Now, we're talking 1 minute of the bright red, okay, that you saw there, that red, okay, and 3 minutes of the near infrared that you can barely see there. And the next day he spoke clearly and he never had trouble after that. I've seen a person with 20.
These are amazing testimonials, by the way. You should make videos with some of these people so that you could literally use.
I do have some videos. I do have some videos on this. And then one of the guys his dentist treated his brain 20 years earlier. He had a stroke, and not the dentist, his friend. And so he treated his brain with the palm light, just this device. Now, he had to, if you're doing 4 minutes of that, you have to do 40 minutes of this, because this is 10 locations on the brain. Oh, there you go.
Wait a second. I got somebody else that wants to say hi to you.
What's the name?
Ooh, sorry, buddy. Sorry. This is Gracie.
Hey, what's the name?
This is Gracie, and this is her brother Theo. Theo's right here. Gracie's right here.
Okay, so we've had people with pets with arthritis in their back portions, not being able to walk very good or whatever, and been able to turn that right around with light therapy. It's quite amazing what it can do for arthritis. And that's humans, with your knee. And again, we have enough horsepower on our product to go into the knee and help improve that. We've had some people avoid knee surgery because they've used the light. But when it comes back to the brain, your guy there, so this dentist treated this guy 20 years after the stroke. 40 minutes he took the light and did the treatment. And the next day he was able to speak clearly after
Wow,
20
that is
years.
so impressive.
And now, but the thing about that is he'd need ongoing treatment. Like some people need ongoing treatment for the rest of their life, maybe. But others are going to be like my friend was one treatment. That's all he needed, for his speech. You don't know. But this guy, unfortunately, his dentist friend got pretty scared because he was a dentist and he treated somebody for this issue with his light. And he was scared about, this guy now talking up a storm and telling everybody he's been helped by his dentist. He was scared he's going to lose his license. So he wouldn't treat him anymore. And he lost the ability, but then they worked it through, I think, eventually, and he got treatment again. And so he's improving. But this is the kind of thing, strokes, concussions, come on, best one
who
yet.
has a lot of concussions is the NFL. And a friend of mine.
Oh, yeah.
Friend of mine runs the NFL health division that focuses on health for all 16,000 former players. I'm going to connect you guys because I think at the end of the day, it sounds like they would benefit greatly from some of the stuff that you've built.
Yeah, but the only challenge of some of these things, like I think there's some kind of lawsuit going on right now between the Players Association and the players themselves who have had concussions. And you know how some of these things get wrinkled in the mire, right? Because
I mean, if there's something like a device like yours that can benefit them, they open it up to the players so that the players can make individual choices. At the end of the day, if there's something that you can help them with, a lot of these players are struggling after their careers with a lot of things.
Oh,
right?
Big time.
Yeah, I mean, joint pain.
Emotions are all screwed up because their brain has been knocked around so many times.
Couldn't agree with you more. Hey, Tom. Tom.
Yeah.
It's been great chopping it up with you. And we're going to have to do another podcast one day down the road. But I have another interview I'm doing in literally 12 minutes. So
okay.
I wanted to literally thank you for your time. You are a tinkerer, you are a creator, you are a builder, you are a hustler. You are out there doing good things for good people. And I want to thank you so much for the time we've had here because I got to tell you, I've learned a ton. And one of the things that I've learned is that you're a builder. You've built things with your hands that make life better for people. And that's super important.
Yeah. And come back to, I believe it's one of God's gifts that he's given me, and I just want to use it correctly and help a lot of people through it, I
think you are. I absolutely think you are.
And Chris, I so much appreciate this interview. I mean, I could be stuck. Well, I'm not stuck in my basement.
You like the little cameo with Theo and Gracie?
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. We had, I'll just say one other one. We had a pet that was relegated to, it was a cat, not mine, but this other guy. And he had one of my mini cats.
I'm not a cat person.
Yeah. He had this mini canopy, which is like a foot square. Okay. He had it for himself. He's a runner, bicyclist and that. Anyways, he had that and he bought it. And then he thought, hey, why don't I try it on my cat? Now his cat was, I think, 15 years old and was stuck to one room, in the house. And that's as far as he would go. And first thing he tried to do the light, and the cat was really skittish, didn't want to go under the light, just resisted him big time, snarled at him, did everything, And he thought, no, I'm going to just keep trying. And he got the cat.
Did you try the palm one? Because I would think that the palm one is easier to work with.
Oh, yeah, it would have been, but he had the big one. So he just, so anyways.
Which big one? Which one are you talking about?
This one, like the foot square, this guy here. This is like
the cat was probably like, dude, what are you throwing your iPad at me for?
Yeah, it's 15 of these little guys, 15 times the area. But he did the treatment on the cat, and eventually the cat, it wasn't too long, the cat started, he'd flick on the switch.
Somebody
and the
wants
cat
to say hi to you. She's like, wait a second, what do you mean this cat got under that big iPad?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, he said at first, skittish, then it started flip on the switch, the light, the cat would come, and eventually the cat was coming from its comfortable bed over to the light to go and position itself under there. And he would actually go to turn off the light, and the cat would snarl at him for turning off the light. And that cat, yeah, and the cat ended up doing not just the room, started doing the house, and then started prowling the neighborhood once again.
That's awesome. Listen,
yeah, so that's a cat story.
You've got some great testimonials. And one thing that I've noticed that you've left out from all your testimonials is some dog stories.
Oh, I got one dog story. If you got, I got multiple, but I got one more for you.
All right, you got to keep this one under 2 minutes because I'm going to be running.
All right, I will. Okay, so this dog, great big lab. Okay, winter time. Remember, I said up here the water becomes solid. It's called ice.
Yeah, it's called frozen. It's called frozen.
Frozen ice. Well, this dog, labs don't have all. I don't think labs are fully connected in their brain. Like they're missing something. So this lab took off after a squirrel that was chasing a.
That's all you heard was.
Yeah, so it took off across the pond, and when the squirrel took off up the tree, this guy was trying to stop, and he just at full speed rammed himself in the other end of the rink pond area into the side where the dirt was and the rocks were, and severely hurt the dog. And they were ready to put the dog down because its hind legs were so painful. It couldn't go up the stairs. They'd have to lift the dog from the behind up the stairs. It was just a mess. They tried, and this went on for a little while, and they were looking at putting the dog down, and they got the light, and that dog went back to chasing squirrels again.
Squirrel.
Yeah, stupidity. But we saved the dog's life from.
That's
but
like I said, you got a great story.
Chris,
listen, let's chop it up again soon. He is Tom Kerber. He is the tinkerer, the developer, the creator, the inventor, the builder.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, all the best.